Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Now this is going to be my first Fusion 360 tutorial, and I've been getting comments asking for this tutorial for a while now, and I ignored them until now because honestly I think I'm not really much of a Fusion 360 or CAD expert. Really not. It's more self-taught. I have an engineering background, but that's really not my specialty. But still, I thought let's do this. Let's just walk you through my design process, and I will try to do it as structured as possible because doing these designs is often a lot of trial and error. And I was also kind of pessimistic about whether it's possible to capture this process without being utterly confusing for everyone that's watching. But I really tried to have this as structured and as logical as possible so that you can actually follow what I'm doing. Now, your question was what to do a tutorial about, so I just did a poll on the micro builders and ultralight micro builders and tech tips group, Facebook group, and clearly the result was show us how to design a pod like this one, for example, or this one that has been quite successful on Thingiverse. So this TPU part here for Toothpick style builds and all-in-one boards. So that's what I'm going to design today, one of those parts, and walk you through the whole process. Now, how does the design process start? Oh, first of all, of course, you have to have an idea. Usually you start with something you need and that doesn't exist, that you can't find on Thingiverse or anywhere else, so that's where you start your designs. Second thing is just to get the components you want to fit into your design. You need to have them already, because otherwise you will probably do the design 2 times because you will realize they don't fit. So what I'm going to do is show you how to design a pod for this nameless RC board. It's an all-in-one ESC FC and the Foxier Nano Predator. So first thing is you do when you design is get a digital caliper and start doing your homework and measuring all the components you want to fit into your design. So in this case, it's just the flight controller and the camera. So I'm just gonna measure out all the dimensions of these. I'm not gonna walk you through this, but just measure everything you could need and write it down on a paper, and then we're going into Fusion 360 and we are going to start to design based on these components. All right, let's go.
All right, after measuring all the components we want to include in our design, we are now finally in Fusion 360. If you do not have Fusion 360 yet, just go ahead and download it. It's free if you are a hobby user. You can find it on the Autodesk homepage. Now, for this tutorial, I will assume that you have basic knowledge of the software and you know roughly your way around these functions because simply I won't have realistically the time to cover all the very basics plus FPV specific things in just one video, but I will go very slow and explain all the clicks I'm doing. Now, we've measured the components we want to include in the design. So the next step is to model dummies. So what I call dummies is just a rough model of all these components we can place in the design space to sort of set the boundary conditions for our design. And what I have is already a sort of little library with a few components I can use. So we have the Foxier Predator Nano and a dummy for the nameless board. And these models can be pretty basic. Many of the details I have on here aren't even necessary. So this is why I won't go through for all the steps to designing those. You will be able, with very basic tutorials and functions, to just design dummies. And often you can also find some STLs online, for example on Thingiverse. People just put these parts online so you can use those as a baseline, but I recommend modeling your own so you can be sure the dimensions are correct. Now I'll just open a new file and go ahead and copy paste all those components I want inside of the file. So let's start with the all-in-one. Right click, copy, and then right click again here on the base of the product structure or the product tree, however you want to call it. Paste new, and here we go. Display the origin to make sure that thing is centered. Looks centered, so I'll just paste this one as it is and go on ground. So I'm grounding it, that I'm not moving it around by accident. Same thing with the cam. Copy and paste new. So the camera, I think I'll have to move it around a bit more, as you can see. So let's just move it up a bit. So we need some margin between the board and the cam, and I want to have a roughly 50-degree angle. So 90 degrees is here, minus 50 is 40. So I have the maximum, I'm just putting this at the maximum camera angle of 50 degrees I want. Quick look if everything is aligned. That's sitting nicely centered on the origin here. So that's basically everything we need to start a design. Alright, now we have those in the 3D space, and this will make it very easy to just design around those components. I usually like to start really designing by sketching the base of the pod onto the flight controller. So I just created a new sketch and we'll start basically designing around the mount. So I want to reuse the mounts I have here on the flight controller. So these M2 screws here. Now let's just put some circles around it. Let's start with 7 millimeters. So I'm using this center diameter circle here, but I'm just pressing C on my keyboard so I can create one of those. Same thing here. And as you'll see, now the camera is kind of disturbing here, so let's just remove that one. So it's not displayed anymore, just making it invisible. I will basically just, for most of the time, design just half the pod to because that will make the whole design process easier. If I just design half a pod, I basically can look inside to just make it easier. So make sure these lines here are nice and tangential to the circles. So again, I'm just pushing L on my keyboard to sketch lines. It's really handy if you memorize those shortcuts. So tangent boundary condition here 2. Let's insert one here 2 tangent, and then some more lines. So basically we design half a base. I think I'm done with my sketch now. Finish sketch. So just design half a base for the canopy. Just select all these fields. Trying not to forget anything. Alright, now time to extrude. Let's try 5 millimeters first, see how it looks. It looks quite good. Now I might have done a mistake because, yeah, I joined this. I want this to be a separate component, but I selected the wrong option, so let's do it again. Right, try not to forget anything. So extrude, and we want to create a new body, not to merge it with the flight controller here. Let's give it 5 millimeters. Okay, that looks good. Now I see I've forgot a little piece here. What I can do is just select these faces here to get rid of that, and push the delete button, and they're gone. Now what we have is basically the first draft basis, one half of it, and now next step is to design the camera mounts. So we're not starting just yet with designing these sort of surfaces, the curved surfaces, these forms. We are just really basically building a structure out of geometrical forms around those components first. Okay, so let's display the camera again, because now we need it. So we roughly have a a base, and now let's just put a sketch on the camera, because it will need mounts quite clearly. So let's just put a circle around this, 7 millimeters. Let's maybe go for 8. That's about it. So we already have extrude this again. Let's give this 3 millimeters. I don't want this to be a new body again. You can already tell I'm just sort of building around the cam. And now what I want is to sort of make a connection between the base and this piece here. So probably just gonna sketch on the camera again. And this time I'm pushing P for project, P on the keyboard. So I can project these lines on my sketch, just selecting the lines of the base. Click OK. And now I can quite easily, so I see I need to project this cam mount thing too, pushing PA on the keyboard again. So I have this all in my sketch. Now I can sort of start building a base for the camera mount. Let's see how it looks. Right, so you can see I'm just moving those lines. Yeah, roughly this. Good. Now I want this to be a tangent again. That one stupid. Like this. Same here. Right. I can simply extrude it now. Right. Still a new body. Okay, let's extrude this too so it's aligned. Now I've slightly made a mistake here. Actually don't want this thing to be here, so let's just delete it. Doesn't work. So what happened here? Let's go. Okay, forgot this piece. Alright, so as you see, we are already starting to get a basic structure for our canopy. Sort of camera mount and a base. And now let's try to design the sort of the slot the camera is, the camera lens is looking out of, and that will also ensure the camera protection. Alright, so first I'm creating an offset plane. Same angle as the camera, so that's I'm just putting it on the rear side and then just moving it up just above the cam lens. Looks good. I can just sketch on there now, create a new sketch. Here we go. Now I create a slot now, which I put on the center of the lens, and down below here, let's try 40 millimeters, let's try 12 millimeters. Make it bigger than the lens, because I need some margin here. Just create a second one around it. Okay, it doesn't look too bad. Now I think this is too big, and I want this to be a little bit bigger here. Okay, great. Finish that sketch. Now, as you can see, I sort of have a draft hole already. Now I'm just, oh, and I forgot a thing. I just want half of it, so go back to edit sketch. Just insert a line in the middle here. So I can split this. Time to extrude it again. New body. Come on. Yeah. All right, that looks good. Okay. All right, now of course this isn't right yet, so we created another sketch to just kind of curve this. Again, pushing P on the keyboard for project to just project the outlines of this body into my sketch. Okay. Now we need an arc. Let's try this 3-point arc here, maybe. See how that works out. Maybe I just, yeah, like this. Seems good enough. Let's just try it. Now I have to remove the camera here, make it visible so I'm not cutting through the cam. Okay. All right. Next bit of structure for a pod. And now I think we can slowly start moving to building freeforms, but first thing I'll do is trying to sort of remove excess material here on this thing. So let's just go ahead and do that. All right, looking quite good. Now, the next step now is to start just sort of designing a shape around all of this structure we created. So this is where now the forms will come into play. This is where things get complicated, where we'll maybe maybe use a little bit more trial and error. So sorry if I have to go slightly back and forth. To get to the right tools, we click on Create Form. And now before we start designing, let's discuss a little bit what kind of functions we have here and basically get familiar with the range of tools we have. So basically what you can do is create these sort of T-spline shapes. A very useful feature, for example, is extrude. So you can just select any shape and just pull out a T-spline shape. And there's a bunch of others. So you can create sort of standard form, cylinders, balls, all kind of pipes, all kind of bodies. But I think extrude is basically one of the most useful tools. And then modifying is pretty important to know roughly what kind of operations you can do. So the most interesting for me is edit form. So if you click on here, you can just basically move around parts or points on this shape. So with these arrows, you can pull and push stuff. You can move it on planes here with these buttons. You can sort of warp it with these buttons here. So try to get get familiar with how this works. Just play around a little bit with these functions, especially with the modify function where you just push and pull stuff around. And other things that are quite interesting is the welding functions, welding and unwelding. So you can kind of merge these points on the T-spline. And another important thing is sometimes you'll need to subdivide those planes. I messed this one up now, but basically what this does is break it down into smaller pieces. So let me just quickly create a new one so I can show this to you on something that is less messy. Just create a T-spline with 4 faces, and when I now select one of these faces and go on subdivide, it's just subdivided into 4 more. And it can be a little bit more precise with my operations of pulling and pushing. And what you already see is we have a symmetry in here. Symmetries are pretty important, and you can set them up here with the mirror function, or when you create a shape, often you have the options to have a symmetry. So you can see this green line here shows that we have a symmetry around this axis, and this is a pretty important feature. But for now, let's just delete all that stuff and start to really produce a shape. All right, so first thing I'm gonna do is remove the cam dummy, because it's just gonna be distracting. I don't need the origin either. First thing I'm gonna do is probably, and this is a lot of trial and error, so I think I'll fast forward some parts of this video where I'm just playing around and try to just walk you through the most important steps. First thing I'm gonna do is just select this cam mount shape here and extrude a 40mm wide body here. So 14, because that's the width of the camera. And I want this to be, so it's the main base body, and now I want this to be symmetrical. So internal symmetry, I just select a bunch of these, oh come on, and just select two of these faces, this one and this one for example, and we'll just automatically create this green line of symmetry around the body. And now what I can start doing is just push and pull this around into the right shape. And as you see, it's kind of hard to see the body here because it's translucent. So let's just quickly go back to the design space. Give this another color. Just make it black. But I pushed A for appearance here, A on the keyboard. Now we can go back. Just clicking on the edit feature puts us back to the form mode. And now we kind of see our structure. And what we'll just do is basically pull and push this thing around our structure. Now I forgot the camera lid or mount here. So just going back again, clicking on design, A for appearance. What's this one? Make this one black too so we can see it. And go back to edit feature. What I'm going to do is just with the modify feature, push and pull stuff around until I like it basically. And if I feel I need more, to be more precise, I can simply split the faces. Yeah, come on. I can select the face here, go on, right click it, subdivide it. So now I have more of these faces, can be a bit more precise when pushing and pulling them around. So what I'll just do now is just go ahead and push and pull until I basically manage to get a shape that I like for this sort of back part here, and then move on to the next one. Alright, I'm quite happy with that shape. And as you can see, again, I just have to model one half of it because it's symmetrical, very important. So I think we have a pretty proper rear shape here. And this doesn't have to be very precise. As you can see, everything's overlapping here, but that's not a problem. So let's start with the second part of this. So what I'm going to do now is extrude again. Just this time, this part here. It doesn't look too bad. Okay, and now again, pushing and pulling until I think I have the right shape, roughly. Okay, now, as you see, even after doing this a few times, it just is a bit of trial and error all the time, but I think I roughly arrived at a shape I like. I just noticed that if I would tilt the cam now, it would just probably touch the sort of part here. So let's go again and push this to have a bit more room for the cam so that I can change the angle. Probably needs to be a bit wider too. Alright, now that we have a sort of rough shape, let's go back into the design mode, go on inspect and do a little section analysis. So I'm just clicking on this plane here, and as you can see, that just allows me to look inside of my canopy, and I can actually see how much space I have left. And if this all adds up. Now, I haven't cleaned this up yet, so of course I can tilt the camera. Okay, so if I put this at the minimum angle, still some room, looks good. And of course I'll have to remove all the stuff inside, but I'm just giving this a rough check to ensure that things are fine. Okay, stop the section analysis. Just clicking on it again. I don't know how to remove this properly. Just do another section analysis and move this plane just outside of my model. Okay, now we can go back to editing this feature. And what I'm going to do now, these parts of the shape that I actually like and want to use, I'll select them and just thicken them. I think I have to do this in the design space. Yeah, I can thicken them now. Let's give this thing -1 millimeter. Okay, doesn't work. Cannot be offset. So this is an error you might get. You have to go back to edit feature, and usually what helps is just removing unnecessary faces. Let's just try to clean this up a little bit before we thicken it. It might have caused the problem. I think, yeah, there's probably a problem here. Let's just remove this. Still looking fine. Okay, let's go back. Try to thicken it again. Alright, now it works. -1, so it just thickens to the inside and not the outside. 1 millimeter isn't much. Let's go for 1.5 first. Yep, looking good. So I have a rough shape now. Same thing with the shape inside here. So let's go back to edit feature, and as you can see, there's still a bunch of faces we do not need. Those here inside. Just get rid of all of that. Same here, not needed, not needed, not needed. So I'm just deleting all the excess faces. Just remove the camera so I can properly see this here. Still a bunch of stuff inside. I'm just cleaning this up. Bye-bye. I don't even know what that is, just removed. Still a bunch sort of cylinder left here. Right, select this one. Right click it. Let's thicken this one too by 1.5 millimeters in a negative direction. Alright. So now we basically turn these shapes into bodies now. And you can still see there's a bunch of excess stuff we do not need. So next step will be sort of doing the cleanup. Just quickly display the camera again. So let's start the cleanup. I'm basically cleaning this up with sketches. So I'll remove the camera again, so I'm not cutting into it, either the board. So for example, here in the project function is very useful here. So for example, I'll just click on P to get this into my sketch. Okay. Now I need a line here that's missing. Okay, now I can select this, cut out here, finish sketch. Extrude. And I can just start cutting away all the excess stuff. by just sketching my way and projecting my way through that. Now, I think I'll need an extra plane to clean up the hole for the camera here. So let's just construct a new plane. Plane at angle. I still remember that this was a 50-degree angle at which I did this this part here. So I can just put a sketch here on a 50-degree angle plane. Start projecting this here. I'll need to mirror it. So I'm just putting a line here, going to create mirror and mirroring these sketch parts. So now I can just basically drill through this hole and remove all the excess material. I'm using a two-sided sketch here, so I'm not cutting away stuff I do not want to cut away. Yes. Right. First rough little cleanup. And what we'll do now is start mirroring the parts of the structure we only designed for one side, so we can really do the final cleanup and merge all these shapes. So I'm going to create mirror. I have to select bodies. Now I select all the objects. I want to mirror. Alright, we have a pretty decent baseline now. What I'll do is also add a fin, because I think it looks cool. So I'm just sketching on the center plane here, and here really pays off that everything is nicely aligned and centered. So you can just sketch on the center plane, and this is right in the middle of my pod. I can just extrude this 1.5 millimeters. New body. As you can see, I purposely extruded this just in one direction. I'll show you in a second why I did this. Alright, now sort of time for the cleanup to merge all these shapes and remove all the excess material. But what I'll do first is take a step back, sketch on the center plane here, do a big rectangle around the entire pod, select it, extrude, and just cut away half of it. Now, why am I doing this? This will make the whole cleanup easier because I just have, first of all, I can see stuff. I can look inside. And second of all, I just have to do the cleanup for one half of, since it's symmetrical, I can just mirror this afterwards and have to do less cleanup. So the function I'm going to use now to merge all these shapes is this one, combine. So I'm going to select them one by one on this one. And just start merging stuff until I'm sure that I have just a single body left. As you can see, bodies are getting less and less. These seem to be leftovers from the design process. Can remove those. Now, here we go. This is our basis, and now it's time to just go ahead and delete excess stuff. So I'm just selecting excess faces, pressing delete, and hoping it works out. No, this didn't work. Is this still separate? No, it's not. Oh, and also I'm grounding this to make sure it doesn't move. Ground it. Alright, look at this, for example. Let's select this, delete, and it's gone. And this is how you can work your way through the entire design, just to clean up stuff and get rid of all the excess materials. This, for example, that Fusion is quite good at just deleting these things without messing up the whole design. If it doesn't work, sometimes it fails, you just have to select other faces and try to delete them. And sometimes you can work with some sketches and some extrudes just to try to clean up this whole design. Fusion's slightly messed up, but it doesn't look too bad. Let's just delete all that stuff. I'm really just working my way through the design using the delete function, and I'll fast forward this at this point, I think, until I clean up the entire design. One more thing that is quite useful that I'd like to show you is the Q button, or Q key. I don't even know which function this is here. It's modify press pull. That's when you push Q. So I can select faces sometimes and just press pull them. This, you can see, this can be quite useful. So in this case, I can just move away the excess material here. There's an excess face here. I will move. And yeah, this is how I iterate my way through this. So fast forward again till I have this thing really cleaned up. Okay, here we go. Starts to look quite good now. I think this is pretty much complete. You can start adding some details like fillets and chamfers, which can look quite cool. Let's try this with these corners, for example. See if it works. Yeah, it looks nice, but only for one of them. The other one seems troubling. So that's a function I like to just add some design features. That looks cool. Same thing on the other side. Let's try to chamfer this. Oh, yeah, I like it. Let's just keep it. So you can sort of just play around until your design looks cooler and cooler. And then finally, if you really like it, you can just mirror it. Go to the mirror tool, select it. The mirror plane, we just select the mid plane here. And let's just change the color. We re-click for better visibility. I just clicked on A for appearance, A on the keyboard. Merge them. And here we go. We're pretty much done. There seems to be one weird thing. What is this? Some sort of little color defect here. I don't know what is this. I'll have to look into that. Can I remove this? Oh. Doesn't matter too much for now. Maybe just, yeah, there was just some other body in there. Wasn't supposed to be there. It's kind of left over. Now, as you can see, we're pretty much almost done. Now, all we have to do is, we're missing the holes here for the flight controller. So let's just add some points in the sketch. So I'm going on point here, hitting points at the right spot. Done. Now right click this plane to create holes. Now we select from sketch. So we can have 4 holes. Now we want them to be slightly tighter than the screws, so it's going to be M2, so I'll just put 1.8 millimeters in there so that I can kind of put the screws inside. Yeah, just going all the way through here. So here we have the mounting holes. Looks pretty neat. again, almost done. I mean, the next step will be just to print this and test fit it. But I can already, since I have my dummies in there, here's already the flight controller. So you can see the USB will clash, but in this case I could just flip the flight controller, so no real problem. Actually here, camera seems fine. Let's see what happens if I tilt it. Seems okay too. And now what you can do, I mean, I didn't fully refine this. You can now go in all the corners, remove all the, for example, this is a little defect here, but that one doesn't matter too much. Will hardly be visible in the final print. You can just really play around, add a little bit more details, more features, more antenna mounts and stuff. But that was, for me, the basic design process I'm using to design these parts. And I hope you found this useful. And if you liked it, I will try to do some more video tutorials and improve on the way I do them. It's actually not that easy to capture these design processes that are a bit chaotic, but I hope I did a good enough job. So I'd be thankful if you just leave your comments below and your feedback and let me know what I could improve and what you want to see in the future. Alright guys, thanks a lot. Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.